So Edison was against this whole idea of AC, not because he disagreed and thought that it was going to be like worse than DC, just simply because of the money parts of it. So he starts suppressing and suppressing all of Tesla's ideas, and eventually he goes ahead and he gives him a contract where he offers him around 50 grand to travel around to all of the different Edison Electric Company areas and work on improving some technologies and things there. So Tesla does this, and then when he asks for the money, Edison denies giving him the money and says it was all a joke and that he doesn't understand American humor.
That is so effed up.
Dude, I mean, I'm like ticked for Tesla.
Like he should have brought that to like civil court or some shit.
I 100% agree with you. So this is where the beginning of my hatred for Edison comes from. But Tesla ends up quitting, rightfully so, and he decides that he wants to make his own electric company. And so he does. And he puts all of his patents into his company. And in order to... Am I skipping something that you were going to say? You gave me like a face.
No.
Okay. In order to get the funding and the money for his company, he had to sell his patents into the company in exchange for stock. So this took the patents out of his own like personal property and put them into the company. So when the company did start going downhill, he ended up losing all of the patents and he was left with nothing in exchange. Tesla has had so many ups and downs.
Oh yeah. His life was definitely a roller coaster.
And I feel really, really bad. So finally he ends up coming up with something that kind of saves his career. He invented something called the induction motor. And it ran on the AC, which is his alternating current power. So he ends up trying to market this AC separate, and we come into this thing where it's kind of like the war of currents. We have Tesla with his AC and his marketing team versus Edison, who has way more funding and prestige than Tesla does, trying to market his DC. Now...
Ooh. Also, I want to point out that J.P. Morgan was funding Edison.
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Well, Edison takes this to extreme measures. He's trying to discredit AC by saying that it's dangerous, and his methods are absurd. If you don't hate Edison already from what we told you, you are about to despise this man. He starts paying kids 25 cents to bring their household pets out into like the public square where he would electrocute and kill the pets using AC to show how dangerous it was. Now, thank God they didn't show any of this, but they showed like pictures of dogs and not like...
I didn't even want to see.
I couldn't. Like, that's absurd. If anybody tried those marketing strategies today, like, that company would be canceled. That would backfire and destroy Edison.
They'd be in jail.
They would be in jail. Like,
right with Joe Exotic.
Yep. But I guess at the time, it ended up working and people started getting scared of this AC technology. And it all came to a head when Edison created a film called Electrocuting an Elephant.
Mm-hmm.
And they literally marched this elephant into the town square, tied him up, and I think it was, like 6,000 watts of electricity. They zapped through this elephant and killed it.
Yeah.
On film, to show how dangerous AC was. And instead of people, like, being horrified, mortified at Edison for doing that, they kind of...
believed his story.
They believed his story.
And, like, it just makes me so upset because that elephant already had a shitty life because it was a circus elephant, and then you just march it to its death and shock it. That's so wrong. And also, shoot, what was I gonna say? Oh, Edison would claim that, like, because Tesla's ultimate goal was like this electricity, like free electricity for everybody that he wanted to do. And Edison was telling everyone that, like, after 6 months of AC running in your household, you'll die. So, like, people were seeing, like, all these animals die, like, with one zap, and like, oh, if it runs in my house for 6 months, I'll die. But, like, that doesn't make sense.
And see, this is drawing parallels to a lot of things that we've talked about in episodes, like even going back to Big Pharma, whereas we probably have better technologies, and even when we talk about aliens, we probably have things that would make life a lot better out there, but they won't make money for the people that hold all the power right now, so they are suppressing and suppressing all of these ideas.
Mm-hmm. And, like, all his paperwork, or all his ideas were all handwritten, and we'll get into what happens with them, but, like, and it makes you think how many other people out there are smart like that and have this universal knowledge, but no, now like don't come forward because it's gonna be a life of hell.
Like the person that invented that car that could run off of just water and then ended up just getting murdered. Okay. So things kind of change for Tesla whenever he meets this guy named Westinghouse. And Westinghouse was a very wealthy man and was able to give a lot of funding to Tesla. So Tesla's whole thing was he wanted things to be better for humanity. He wasn't out there for the money. He wanted the world to be a better place. He wanted to keep making inventions that were going to improve the world. When you look at the opposite spectrum, you have Edison, who was 100% in it for the money. So Tesla and Westinghouse end up pairing together in this like battle against the Edisons. And oh, this is a funny fact. Did you know Edison secretly invented the electric chair? To show the powers of the AC?
Using his AC unit.
Yeah, he like secretly funded it. And that's why we have electric chairs today. Well, I mean, I guess we don't really use them anymore, but you don't know what I mean.
Little devil.
So eventually, Tesla and his AC end up becoming more acceptable. And I guess we use AC today, so I guess you can say that they really did win like the war of the currents. But there were problems. During this giant war of the currents, Westinghouse's company started running out of money. And he asked Tesla, because every time that the AC was being used, they were paying out royalties to Tesla. And he was actually making like really good money. It said that, let's see, or actually I'll get right back to that in a minute. So Westinghouse's company starts running out of money, so he asked Tesla if he could just stop paying him royalties. And Tesla felt so compelled for his friend Westinghouse that he decided that he was going to leave himself out on $12 million in royalties, which $12 million back then is equal to about $300 million today. That he just said, you know what, you're my friend, I don't care about the money as much as I care about the company and the technology we're creating, so he decided not to pay himself.
That's so sweet.
This guy was such a good guy, and the fact that he's not like really well remembered just blows my mind and just shows you the power of big corporations. Well, he ended up selling any of the remaining AC patents that he had and received $216,000, and he used that money in order to become independent. With that money, he began just mass making inventions. He pioneered X-ray technology. He came up with one of the first remote controls, which he went to a park and he had like a little remote controlled boat that he was sailing around, and everybody thought that he was using some type of magic because like that technology was so far ahead of its time. We're talking about like late 1800s, was driving this remote controlled boat around. That's insane.
He also invented like neon lights, fluorescent lights, robots. Did you see anything about his pocket-sized earthquake machine?
No.
So like he made this pocket-sized machine you could stick to like a New York skyscraper, and it would create vibrations strong enough to bring the whole building down.
What? That is crazy.
Yeah, of course they never really used it, but like it was just like he would make things that didn't even really need a purpose. He would just make them because he thought of them.
And he would like pre-see these inventions in his head, which brings me to a whole nother set of theories. Like, where was that? What if that was coming from some alien technology? Or if you want to look at it spiritually, what if that was coming from God? Or like, that's crazy.
And then like, what also gets me is they said a lot in the videos I watched that he invented the technology behind X-rays.
Yes.
But like in science, when it comes to X-rays, all you hear, like the name pounded in your head is Rosalind Franklin.
Yep.
And like, I need to research more into that, because like I wonder who was really first, like who really did the work.
Now it says he pioneered X-ray technology, so I think he like was like one of the forerunners that came up with like the ideas of it. Now as far as like making the very first X-ray, that may have been the other person. Maybe that's why it's done that way. But he still needs to be credited for his work into it.
Yeah, he's not even mentioned in a science textbook when it comes to that.
Now, probably his best known invention is the Tesla coil. And he was going to use these coils in order to broadcast radio signals. This was a technology that was completely new at the time, but Tesla had, and remember y'all, we're talking late 1800s here, he had this idea that messages could be sent completely remotely through no medium. So we're talking like text messages here, y'all, in the late 1800s. And this idea was just so unheard of, but he created this Tesla coil in order to be able to do that. And as he was working on this, a tragedy happened. His lab that he was using caught on fire and burned up along with most of his inventions and his work.